Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
It's really, really good to welcome you back. Welcome to
Thank you.
Stuart Semple, who has agreed to meet with me for a second time because one interview simply wasn't enough.
No, we covered a lot though, didn't we? But there's more to be done.
Yes, there is. I think kind of rooting around in your work is so interesting because it does cover a span of time, I guess, where modern art history isn't maybe followed kind of like as a chronology, whereas with your work I do get the feeling that we could follow through kind of quite punctuated stages quite easily, how you've sort of
Oh,
come up upon things.
well, that's interesting. I never really saw it like that. But yeah, you're probably right. It definitely goes through, well, it follows my life, doesn't it? So,
Yeah, but maybe that's part of it actually, is that
mm,
well, I mean, there are other people in the kind of oeuvre, especially in British contemporary art, who make their vision about their lives. I mean, Tracy Emin, for example, we know her
yeah.
life through her work. Would you say that we know your life through your work then?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't talk about my life, but my life does influence what work I make and the phases of the work, I think.
It was
Probably.
something when I reviewed our first interview, something I felt we could look at a bit more is the idea that there was almost like a flip point, a pivot point in your life, work life, where you went from being introspective to looking at the outside world, really,
Mm,
and becoming critical of like the external.
mm.
Um, can we just go back to that sort of point again? And I'm going to bring up the first image, which is again very kindly you shared.
It's actually really embarrassing.
Okay.
That's what I was like when I was a teenager, right? So this is actually probably not a year after I had that near-death experience. So right now I'm kind of in my flat making those early works as a way to kind of cope.
Mm.
So this is before, yeah, so that's that sort of era, that sort of period.
And at that time, again, when we spoke before, you said that perhaps you didn't have the language almost to kind of look at what was happening to you
Mm.
uh, in a particularly sophisticated way, but that something had to come out.
Yeah, exactly. There was something
Um,
there that needed to be expressed, but I just didn't really know how.
but what was the thing that happened that then meant you kind of made this transformation into becoming so critical of the external world? Looking with such a
Um,
critical eye at what I think of as political system, or kind of raging against the external machine of um well, yeah, the concerns of our time in the early part of the 21st century.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to put my finger on it. I think sort of probably a few things aligned at the same time. I think maybe my vocabulary as a painter started to improve as I'd made quite a lot of work.
Mm.
So that was one thing. And then I think emotionally, after this really traumatic thing that happened to me, I started to heal. I started to recover. So I kind of didn't really need the work as a sort of coping tool. It wasn't really that it wasn't needed as catharsis anymore.
Mm.
And then I started to identify more with like a sort of societal anxiety, like at a wider level, and the way that the image world I was working with was impacting on other people's don't know, sort of, yeah, anxiety basically. The way that the world we were in was kind of perpetuating some of this sort of fear. And I started to sort of look more at that.
Mm. The vocabulary you talk about in your painting, um, I mean, there are obvious influences. You can go and look you up on Wikipedia, and it says stuff about Richard Hamilton, for example, and always references pop culture, pop
Mm.
art. But when you think about the refinement of your actual painting vocabulary as you went along, yes, you were kind of prolific, weren't you? And that in itself refines through practice. But was
Mm.
there someone or something, because you were really like a lone wolf by that stage? You weren't under any kind of tutelage, you weren't on a course,
No,
you were out in
there
the
was
world. So
nothing.
was there someone in particular that
Um,
said
well,
something to you, that worked with you?
Not particularly, no. I mean, it was very, very isolated. I mean, it's sort of like that classic kind of outsider folk artist thing, really. But I did go to Borders every day, and I did look at the art, the spirituality, and the marketing sections. I think I told you that before. But in the art section, a few things started to really kind of like pop out to me as oh, that could be really useful. Oh, there's people who've looked at culture, and definitely the pop stuff started to come up, but I was never really like, everybody thinks I'm obsessed with Andy Warhol, which is insane because I'm actually not. I'm actually really into much more critical pop than that, which is quite strange.
In another interview you said that you're more like Tom York than Warhol. Now, I mean, that was in context of you likening your work in some way to the process of making music.
Yeah. That would be great. I mean, I'd much more, I'd look up to him a lot more than Warhol. I think he's made arguably better work, probably. I mean, Warhol's made brilliant things. He's a great artist, but in terms of artists that really inspired me, he's nowhere near the top of my list.
Okay, so I mean, I really do want to stay on this page for longer just because it's such an excellent photograph.
The state of me.
Well, without being offensive, then I would say not much has changed, but you look really the same. Have you developed some amazing freezing process in your studio to maintain how you look? I mean, do you feel very different when you see this photograph?
Oh, it's like night and day. It's like it's someone else. I don't recognize me in it. Yeah, I don't recognize me in it.
It's so strange because it's so, I mean, again, obviously I've only met you in person once and I've encountered you twice now in this format. But it's remarkable.
You can tell it's me.
Yeah.
Actually, there's something freaky that's happened. My friend's next door neighbor looks exactly like me. And he sent me a photo of the other. I mean, exactly. He's got the same glasses, everything. It's really weird. There's another one of me going around. Lives in Margate. Anyway.
Are people stopping him?
I don't know. But they probably do. I'm going to ask.
Anyway, when you were in Borders and you were educating yourself, I mean, you sent me a Rauschenberg.
I did.
Is this the kind of thing that you were discovering at that point, or had you already been aware of Rauschenberg?
No. So Rauschenberg was on my horizon because I saw him. He flashed past when I was at Bretton Hall in the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, right? But I didn't really look at Rauschenberg. Like someone said something, I saw something, and it just sort of imprinted something somewhere. But then I understood what he was doing, and I got very, very excited. And it was just so liberating looking at Rauschenberg at that time.
Was it a feeling of kind of kinship?
In a way, yeah. I could see like a shared perspective and that he'd kind of like worked stuff out. But the main thing that was coming out of it was this sort of idea of like hybridity. I was really into that at the time. Like different things can go together to tell more of a story than the separate parts, and how painting perhaps could be politicized and could actually be deeply critical of what was happening in the outside world. And I was fascinated with his relationship with Jasper Johns and everything else, and the idea of like a coded language and a way of sort of speaking in subtexts, not necessarily explicitly, and it gave me the capability to like sort of bury meaning, and those were the aspects that I got fascinated.
At odds though a little bit in one way with the idea of like the everyman accessibility of art that you've spoken to before, that art is the right of everybody. And
it is.
Did you mean at that point that art is the right of everybody to make, to see, to understand, or did you mean in a more finely tuned way than that?
What do you mean?
You're talking about here the kind of coded languages, the hidden meaning, subtext, things that not everybody would be aware of. That's quite an exclusive thing, an elite thing.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I didn't mean that. I meant like that he, for personal use, could have a different use for his painting. So what I mean is like him and Jasper Johns, obviously you couldn't be homosexual at that time, so they had a dialogue between each other in their work as a sort of hidden storytelling. And I liked the idea that if I really needed painting for a cathartic reason, it didn't necessarily have to have to burden the audience with it. So I could find a way to speak to what was going on kind of under the surface. But that wasn't like I want to exclude people from seeing the work. It's just
that's different also, again, then to another point I really want to speak to you about. One of the driving forces of doing the second interview really is the idea of kind of erasure, this process of making to not negate, but simply to be nothing, to not be, to be nothing, to evaporate somehow. Because in the moment of making, and you did allude to this before, in the moment of making, there's often nothing of the self. So when you've made something that's got layers of meaning, and where perhaps one of those layers of meaning is about your very direct experience of being through fear or the anguish of illness and so on, is there a negation there of self, or is that actually making something that does embody totally who you are?
It's a good question.
It's a long-winded question.
No, but it's a good question. I'm just need a minute. Well, I mean, it depends what you define as the self to start with. So I think that's like a fundamental thing. So if the
7
self is
interviews later, we might get to that one.
That's a really deep question. So that, you know, I would answer it in a way like the small self, or the I that thinks it's having this experience, probably expressed something it was going through emotionally. Now, whether that's the absolute self, I doubt it very much. Did that small self go away, come along and erase it, scribble over it, or paint over it because it wanted to hide it, or it thought that it had expressed itself and it's no longer necessarily to be there? Absolutely. And you see Rauschenberg do that all the time. Basquiat does the same thing. Cy Twombly too. And the idea of erasure is fascinating because the creative acts happened. Still in there. The history's still in the work, right? The energetics of it.
Yeah, the energetics of the work. It's why I think, you know, talking to you last time, thinking about notions of struggle, the struggle of making. And even when the making of the work is used the energies of maybe multiple people, assistants and so on, to make something that is not direct person to paint to surface, in the sense that, you know, your painted work might be, you know, how one, you said to me before that you're kind of like a founder.
Yeah.
That you set things up and you wander off.
Yes.
Right?
I tend to do that.
So that's kind of easy to get on board with and to think about when we look at your installation work.
Yeah.
But it's harder to do when we look at your painting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And
so, but could the same thing apply, actually? Like, you've set the thing up, you wandered off.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, you make a painting, you're done, aren't you? And it's sort of happened. It's in the past. It's gone. It exists, but I'm not still at it. I was here. I painted this. I expressed that. That's why I talk about it a lot, like the process, a lot like recording a song. You know, like a musician goes in the studio, presses record on the tape, performs something, presses stop on the tape, and there it is. That's what happened on that day at that time, and there it is forever. And that's it. But you do have to get out of the way at some point because you have to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, but both painting and music both have this incredible yield over time, don't they? So you've set it up, you've done the thing, and then 15 years later, people are still whistling the tune. People are still recalling and seeing in memory through the experience of seeing your painting. And I wonder how much that kind of gives life to painting, and if that life has anything still to do with you.
Well, I don't think it does, because I think the world's the thing that's moving, you know, and I think the context shifts all the time. You know, I made stuff that didn't make any sense, and I can certainly think of songs that nobody was interested in until their time came, you know, and then all of a sudden people are, oh, that's an interesting thing. And also, it's really strange the things that people are interested in as well. That has nothing to do with me. So I think something's quite good and no one likes it, or they see something in something I've never seen. So it really does appear to be like you do let go and you let something happen and you get out of the way and the work does its thing. You know, the artist's done for me, it's at least in painting.
So you made a bit of work kind of around Kurt Cobain, the cultural value of him, the symbol of him.
Yeah.
What is the symbol of Kurt Cobain all about to you?
That's a good question. I think he symbolizes a lot.
But
he's really like, to me personally,
yeah.
And I think he's like, I don't know, there's so much to him, you know. I think he was a really misunderstood artist that was really talented. But I think he's an idol, and he's someone that I look up to, and he's someone that I think would be better if he was still here. And I kind of I find him fascinating in so many ways. I love how multifaceted he is as an artist. I love all the directions he goes in. I don't know, there's a lot to him. He's a complicated person.
Again, in context of the wider themes of what we're discussing, when you then made work about Kurt Cobain, were you, Stuart Semple, making work about Kurt Cobain, an idol who you...
No.
Right, so you were using him only as the symbol that was...
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm talking about society's connection with Kurt Cobain and what he means to society, not to me. So it's much broader than that.
This is a really subtle thing for particularly like A-level students to try and really look at, is that, you know, here's a painter, you're the painter, you're making work about a thing that, you know, we're telling our students all the time about finding meaning, developing meaning. But actually you're broadening out from personal meaning.
100%. And it's really interesting because I've had people write to me.
Does it make it grand and great and sort of actually then beyond the ken of most people?
What? To do what? To
broaden it beyond the personal?
No, I don't think so. I think anyone can do that. I mean, that comes from empathy and that comes from looking outside your own four walls. I mean, it's interesting because I did have someone who was an A-level student write to me and she got told off for painting Eminem and various pop cultural figures. And her teacher said, you know, what you're doing, you're just painting celebrities, you know, what's going on? And they said to me, you know, but Warhol's painting celebrities, you've painted, and they showed me this. And so how can it be wrong? And I said, well, it depends why you're painting them. They were like, what's the intentionality behind it? You know, I'm talking about a whole generation of kids. I'm talking about grunge. I'm talking about the aspiration to actually be a loser. I'm talking about the death of physically recorded music. I'm talking about the death of the last great rock star. I'm talking about the fact that ever since that moment, I feel like things have degraded and become less risky, less real, less visceral, at least in music. You know, we don't have icons like that anymore.
Is it hard to go thinking across kind of music culture into other forms or expressions of culture? Is it the same death round about the same time in that kind of 1994 period forwards? You know, has there been a kind of cataclysm, a cultural cataclysm?
Yeah. Broadly? Yeah, and it's linked intrinsically to a rise in fear and isolation and atomization and the rise of digital. Because because the day Kurt Cobain, the same week Kurt Cobain died, was the same week that the MP3 was invented. And that's weird. Because music became digital and our connections became digital.
It's a cheap shot on my part, isn't it, putting the two of them together? But
no, I'm glad you did. Somebody should have done. I'm surprised it's taken this long for someone to do that. No, that's exactly what was supposed to happen.
What is it? What is it that happens when you're painting something, when you're recording, that means you go into this passive mode? Like, is this passive? Is this you passively recording something? Or are you very active in this?
Well, physically, I'm extremely active. So the music's very loud. I'm jumping all over the place. All those splats you see. This is a huge, quite a big painting. It's like 2 meters. All those splats on the left, I'm literally jumping up and down like that. There's gesture in it. I'm passionately recording what happened. You know, I'm emotive when I'm painting this. I mean, it looks deadpan. It looks like I'm just recording the facts, but no, that's not what's going on at all. I'm recasting it, you know, grabbing it out of history and moving it somewhere, and it's a very active thing to do.
Really interesting relationship with time always, I think, pop art. You know, it's ripping out the guts of something from the past and bringing it into the present where it perhaps doesn't belong, but for it to be further scrutinized in a way that it maybe hasn't done in the past.
Yeah.
It breathes new life into it for a moment and then leaves it for dead again.
Yeah, that's it.
There's a kind of cruelty in that, isn't
there? No, there is. Like, I do get that. But it's kind of the job, you know, like it's no different than Duchamp putting urinal in a gallery. It's just you're doing it with images. You're moving something from one place to another. But really, it depends why you're doing it. So you might be doing it to say, look, you know, let's freeze time for a little bit. Let's move this somewhere else. Let's give it room and space to look at it. Let's really look at it. Let's really consider it. Let's bring how we would look at art to how we would look at a moment in history, or how we would look at an image that's been constructed or inherited. And in this case, this is a found image because this is from the Seattle Police Department took photos of Kurt Cobain's greenhouse when they found him. He'd obviously shot himself and overdosed on drugs. And the film reel never got developed because they just thought it was a suicide. 27-year-old rock star, drugs, gun, taken his life at the end. And it was only relatively recently that they bothered to develop the film. And it was very, very telling because it didn't quite add up to be a suicide. You know, the photos are odd. If anyone who's really clued up about looking at images can say, hey, these images don't make sense. And that's really fascinating.
Did you have a public argument with Courtney Love, or did I dream that?
No. When I had my show in LA, she had a play down the road. And this was on show, and she was literally in this play like 2 blocks down. But I don't think she came. So I think you must have dreamt it.
Wow, can you imagine? That's another whole layer of this, isn't it? It's like,
well, it is, yeah.
Dreaming of actions that Stuart Semple may have been part of based on his paintings that I've seen. Very strange.
Yeah. But Courtney loves weird anyway.
I want to know stuff about this. And it seems really mealy-mouthed of me to focus in on tiny parts and pick them out, so I apologize. But Kurt lied. What did he lie about?
Well, he said, I swear I don't have a god. And it sounded like I swear I don't have a gun. And both of those are untrue.
Where did
he also interestingly, his suicide note's very clear. It's not even a suicide note. He was quitting doing music. It sort of says, I'm fed up clocking in and clocking out. I don't really believe in the art anymore. I go out there, but I'm not really doing it. I don't really mean it. So if that's true, then, and he's coming out and he's doing those gigs and he doesn't really believe in his own art and he's just doing it because he has to, then those performances are lies, right? And he's acutely aware that he's just going through the motions rather than making art anymore. So there's a big thing of that in there.
Is your work always really about a lie? You trying to unearth a lie?
No, not always. Not always, but I think
a lot of
you know, Yeah. I think sometimes, or at least to poke a little bit deeper in something, or that's the critical side of it. That's sort of like, well, how does it really work? Is there another way of looking at it? It's not always sort of duplicitous. It's not always like there's a lie to be unveiled, but it's like, maybe we can look at this from another point of view. Maybe there's another way to consider it.
Is it hugely cynical?
No, I mean, there's definitely moments where things are celebrated, and things are championed, and it's in equal doses. I think I try and keep it balanced, but at the end of the day, I paint about things that I think are problematic more than things that I think aren't, probably.
Why, when this is so large on the wall, I mean, I haven't seen this in person.
Yeah.
Do you get audience feedback about this? Do you kind of collect such thing? Do you?
I'm just not there. I'm done. Like, I'm very rarely there at the private view. I don't see that. I don't get too involved in that. So I don't really know.
I love the idea of, some very nice Middle England buyer approaching, as you said in the last interview, oh, they're lovely colours.
Mm.
And then after a brief discussion with you, being rather put off.
Exactly. That's sort of the point. So,
but where people are put off, obviously people are also drawn in. Do you see the illusion of closeness? An illusion of closeness with these people or these events? You're giving us the window to see the thing, but are you in any way deliberately enabling a closeness, an intimacy?
Well, I think so, to an extent. I mean, there's definitely a decision here to paint this thing huge, and to disrupt, and to make you confront it and question it. Because you're not going to get on the internet and go to the Seattle Police Department and find a small JPEG of a picture. Like, no one's doing that. So, I'm quite aware of what I'm selecting and what I'm sort of bringing forward. So I guess that does give you proximity to things, but they're very selected things, sort of the things I'm selecting to bring.
But again, intention. You've said the word intention. Is it that you want people to know more about Kurt Cobain? Is it that you want people to inquire into how we are actually systematically lied to in our kind of cultural context? We're fed lies all the time.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But I mean, it's just to invite that questioning. I don't really know where it's going to go, or like how deep it becomes. How far they're going to follow that into it. But it seems that something like this is a very this one particularly is a very strong doorway into questioning something. Why did he paint Kurt Cobain? Is that a bag of bullets? Why is the title The Assassination of Kurt Cobain? What's the deal with the shoe? Why this particular crop? Why is it composed like this? What is he trying to do? And I'm kind of goading you to ask the painting what it's all about.
Also, is it a kind of proof? Is it a proving? When you make a painting, you're building a body of evidence of something, for something. I think about this even when, looking at you as a younger man. Is painting proof of life for you?
Well, I think it was in those days, because I never knew if I was going to die tomorrow. So it was like, I was here, I did this. And people talk about that. I mean, that's a very egotistical thing that artists talk about a lot, about how the things they're making will be monuments that outlive them. And Damien Hirst obviously wants to be immortal, and we all understand that. But when you're actually that frail and that fragile, you actually are about to pop your clocks any minute. Art's a very useful thing, because it does do that. It does give you a sense of permanence where you may feel very, very impermanent. But I do think that changed as that wore off.
Right.
It was
So
less
that
about
wore
that.
off. What was the thing that, was it just getting older and having a wider experience?
It could be. It could have been. It could have just been that. I just started, I grew up. It could be that simple. I don't know. It'd probably have happened to anybody.
It's a fascinating thing, like when I moved house, I brought my portfolios from Shelley Park out from when I did my foundation year.
Yeah.
And saw all this stuff I made when I was 17 and 18. And I was a bit embarrassed about some of it. And I was really proud of other things that I found. It must be so, I find it really interesting where an artist has got quite a large archive of work that traces us right back to when you were actually kind of this age. And where there's no hiding it away in the loft, actually, is there? There's just a sense that it's all out and proud. And I guess any mistakes you've made are there to be seen.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, the difference here is, of course, it was all in the public from the first day. It was up on eBay. So it wasn't evolving on an MA course somewhere with your lecturers. It was all in the public eye from the start. And, 90% of it, I'd probably never shown anyone. If I could go back in time, I'd evaporate all of it.
Did you consider yourself at the time to be brave?
No, I wasn't thinking about that. I just had to make stuff. Not at all.
Why were you putting it on eBay? One a day.
3 a day.
3 a day, so sorry. My goodness.
Yeah. Why? Because I felt like I wanted to talk. I don't have anyone to talk to. And I was having a mental health crisis and there was nowhere else to put it. There was no blogs or Facebook or YouTube or anything. So I just started whacking them on eBay.
Did it become a manifestation of a shared consciousness? Is that what it's not just about communicating, is it? It's about actually, it's sharing on a whole other level, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think it was that. I think there was a strand of that, and about putting it back into the system, taking images from it, putting it back in it, something about that. And but it was just a way of coping. It was just something to do while I was trying to heal, and I wasn't really thinking about it too much, like why I was doing it. It just seemed very natural.
This makes me sound terribly cynical now, but did you know, though, did you have a kind of prescient sense that it was pioneering to put it on eBay, for example?
No, didn't even cross my mind. It was just like, that's there, I'm going to put it on eBay. And someone bought them and I was like, oh, great, I can pay the rent. People like them. And then the main thing was, oh, wow, there's other people like me. Like what I'm going through isn't weird. They don't think I'm a strange person for having these feelings and these emotions. I don't feel alone. Oh, great, I've got friends. I'll keep doing it. And, I guess there was some validation.
Now, at your age now, grand old age of 41, would you say that, the immediate or contemporary version of that, where, if you had been that age now, you would already have had all these other, I guess, resources, because the online world is now fully functional, hyper functional. Would you still, I wonder if you would still be making the same work?
I've no idea. No, I don't think so. I think I would. I'd probably still do the same thing, but I'd post it on Instagram. But I think the difference would be no one would notice. So I probably wouldn't still be doing it at the age of 41 because no career would have emerged. Sorry, the dog.
I did say you should just bring him up, get him to come and say hello.
No, he's all right. It's been good.
The camera shy.
I don't know. I'd probably done the same work, probably. Although, we're in a different time though, so the work would have been about different stuff for sure.
Yeah, even in 2015, you were making work about something that happened 21 years before. So
Which was what?
again, time is like, we're looking at
Oh,
this stuff, thinking that, you're taking, again, you're displacing time, actually.
yeah, that's true. But, I enjoy looking at history and looking at those sort of key moments where things change, sort of questioning them. I find them fascinating, especially in terms of imagery.
Mm. What would you say is like now from this moment, from today, what are the icons of today? Do we have any icons?
The coronavirus, the circular thing with the spikes is like the big one. The face mask, they're huge, huge images. They'll last hundreds, if not many hundreds of years. What else?
What are you going to
something positive?
Huh? What are you going to paint next?
Oh, well, that's a very good question, because that's exactly what I've been working on. I've got a whole new way of making paintings that I've been working on. So I spent the last 3 years working on my process, and I haven't actually painted really anything. And I'm getting to a point now where I'm about to paint something. I'm actually really excited about it. Really excited about it.
So it's top secret?
No, it's not. I don't know what it is. That's the point. So I've realized that this new process I've come up with is a lot more like writing music. And I've spent 3 years getting really obsessed with how record producers and songwriters really work. And I discovered that John Lennon did the Imagine album in 9 days, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So I've been really dissecting like studio practices of like the greatest record producers and songwriters, and seeing how I can apply that to the process of making paintings. And I don't know what will happen, but I'm hoping it'll be radically different, because I've got to a point where I just feel like I'm making the same painting again and again and again. Actually, a bad version of the last painting I made. So I was like, I'm not going to do any more painting until I really, really shake up the process completely. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm about to start, and in my words, recording some demos of some new songs.
Okay.
To see what they're like.
I'm really intrigued now. Is this something that beyond you sort of dissecting studio practice of the greatest producers, what are the kind of image-based inputs?
Oh, well, that's interesting. So that it's not actually image-based at the moment. It's all text, which is really strange. The images are just about to happen. So I haven't added the images yet.
So is that what you mean when you say you don't know what's going to emerge?
Yeah, absolutely. There he is. He won't leave me alone. Go down.
Well, Stuart, It looks like you've definitely got someone else to go and speak to now who needs you.
I think I've got to look after him. He's not gonna last.
Thank you.
No, thank you. It's been really fun.
Still not enough. You never know. It needs to be number 3.
Yeah, maybe once I've started making these new paintings a bit and I'm a bit further in, we can have a chat about them or something. Yeah,
I'd love that. Anyway, Stuart Semple, you've been very gracious, good-natured, and a delight to speak to, so thank you.
Oh, you've been a delight too. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
I'm going to go and see what Wilbert wants. Bye.